So the teams have been announced for the Rugby World Cup final here in Paris on Saturday evening, and there's some real talking points in both teams. Boys, let's start with the All Blacks. And I guess it wasn't surprising, Jeff, that Brodie Retallick gets the start.
Yeah, no surprises there. The fact that Whitelock's been outstanding coming off the bench. Just the rotation policy. Is that a word? We shouldn't talk about rotation policy. There are some significant changes, and the one that no Dane Coles. The fact that Samisoni Tokiaho's won the race to be the reserve hooker. I'm wondering how much that is about countering what the opposition are going to bring. Would like to have seen his experience, but ultimately Mark Talia came in. Mills was really good last weekend. Look, you sort of knew who your standout players have been through the tournament and probably over the last 12 months. And fortunately for the All Blacks, they've got to this point where they had choices they could make, and this is the way they've gone.
It's similar to the Irish sort of test, really. I mean, you're comfortable with sort of Retallick or Whitelock, but obviously they've gone for the fact that let's start fast, try and build that lead, and then come home with a bit of experience off the bench. Yeah, Tokiaho coming in for Coles. Probably a little bit more explosive, sort of trying to counteract that sort of 7-1 split from the Springboks, but it's a solid team. Once again, as I mentioned before, I mean, even if Whitelock started, I think you'd still be comfortable. It's not wouldn't say it's more of a surprise. It's that you're comfortable with sort of who starts there. But it'll be interesting. I think where they're going to get to: start hard, start fast, and then bring it home with some fairly experienced guys.
Nepo Laulala in for Fletcher Newell. Is that simply a bigger body?
Oh, absolutely. It's certainly a bigger body. I mean, just vastly more experienced. I mean, that's the reality of what Nepo can bring. And he has been in good form. And the All Blacks have said over the last few weeks, we've got 6 really, really good props. And I think what they've recognised, and actually, if you look at the results for the Springboks, they haven't been dominant in the first half of games of Springboks. They've won their games in the last 20 to 30 minutes. And Nepo's going to have a big shift at some point. If this game is close, the reserves for the All Blacks are going to be the critical part of their team. And I look at this, Mills, and I like the Tamaiti Williams selection. Yes, it's a risk. The fact he's so inexperienced, but he's shown, particularly this last couple of games, he's well and truly going to be good enough. But this is a different level we're talking about here. This is a different game. This is a Rugby World Cup final. There are some young men will have some nerves in the belly already, knowing the fact that they're going to be responsible for closing out this game.
Yeah, and Nepo does that, doesn't he? He'll come on, and obviously he won't possibly get around the field as much as what we sort of would have probably wanted from a Coles, but sort of that's counteracted by Tokiaho bringing that. Tamaiti Williams, he's the full package, right? But albeit he's pretty young, so I think that's probably why they've gone to that. Last week the Springboks brought on their front row, and they really hammered sort of the England side, got themselves back into the game, won penalties, and that's probably where I think the All Blacks have said, look, we've got to make sure we shore that up, and Nepo brings that. He's had a good tournament, he's been well rested. Let's hope he's a good nick.
At a 5-3 split on the bench, they haven't fallen into the trap of going with the Springboks and putting more forwards in that reserve bench.
You said trap, because we don't know. We'll know after this weekend whether it is a trap or not for the Springboks. They've gone 7-1. They did that against the All Blacks at Twickenham pre-tournament. They feel as though they've got plenty of cover. Look, it's a risk, but it was interesting. We spoke to Victor Matfield this morning, and he talked about Rassie Erasmus looking about having impact, not factoring injuries. Look, Cheslin Colby will clearly be covering halfback, we assume. So they're relying heavily on Faf de Klerk. It also tells to me they're going to try and avoid a high-tempo game. The fact that they're going to try and avoid the fact that fatigue shouldn't be a factor. But this is huge. I mean, the fact that Mane Lebok couldn't even make the 23 after playing in every other game, Mills. But we also expected Hondre Pollard to have a big role in this tournament, and he's coming in the business end. It's what we expected. I wasn't surprised, but I certainly think it's a risk.
Where they're going to get into trouble if 2 backs go down, I think they're fairly well covered. Even if they lost the midfield earlier on, obviously Pollard moves out one, Billinson comes up to the front, and then you got LaRue that comes on, to fullback. Yeah, similar as well if you lose a halfback. But the big one will be if they lose, two midfielders or even 2 backs. But it's going to rain. They're going to go and play their own style, and their own style. They don't care what it sort of looks like, whether it's pretty or not. That's proven in the past that it wins Rugby World Cups.
Well, you talk about injuries. I mean, my mind goes back to Nelspruit last year, Jeff, when Faf de Klerk got knocked out in the first 60 seconds of the Test match. Where would they be if that happened?
Well, like I say, you probably got Cheslin Colby playing at halfback for them
in a World Cup final.
In a World Cup final, but they're looking at it from a perspective of giving them the best opportunity to win, and I think they believe it's having those 7 forwards come off the bench in the second half. I think they see that as their best way of beating the All Blacks. So that comes with risk. Now, if they've gone the other way and they haven't got the impact that they're looking for, look, they're looking to come over the top of the All Blacks. There's no doubt about it. They can't deny that. If they try and deny that, I think they're trying to fool everybody, because they've selected this team to go out and dominate and do one thing. They've relied heavily on scrums, Mills, in the last 30 minutes of games to win them test matches. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not exciting. It is not pretty, but it's a formula that's worked.
But you look on the other side of it too. This is why their start's so important to the All Blacks. They've got to get out early, and then the interesting part would be, how do you counter that? If they get out to a nice good lead, then do you bring the fresh legs on before the bomb squad come? Almost bite them before they even want to try and come back at them. It's interesting because it's intriguing in the fact that, okay, well, it will be a counter punch after a counter punch. But the key thing for the All Blacks is they've got to start well. If they get into a fight with and it's close, I feel the Springboks will gain that extra bit of momentum, extra confidence, extra leg, bring that bomb squad on, and really try and sort of suffocate them out of the game.
Springbok coach said after the semi-finals, we're going to have to score 30 points to beat the All Blacks. Do you really believe that?
No, I don't think he will believe that. If you look at their form through the course of the tournament, that's not how they've won their games. The fact that the game has been really, really tight. There's been nothing, like it was 6-3 against Scotland at half-time. I mean, they're not looking to go out there and blow teams off the park. What they are is trying to grind it out. So I don't think he believes that, particularly if the weather's going to be as average as it's predicted to be. I will say this, the kicking game is going to have to be good. If you want to win this game, you need to play in the right parts of the field, and you've got to back your defence. Both teams will have to do that. Both defences are really good, Mills. I mean, that's what we've got sort of facing here, that this is one of the best defence up against probably arguably the best attack in the tournament in the All Blacks, and it's whether or not which one of those can dominate enough of the game to control the scoreboard.
If Mani Labok was playing, perhaps I would believe that what was coming out of there in terms of the 30 points, but he's not. And so clearly they're going into a game where it's going to be tactical and kicking. Discipline for both sides is going to be massive, because you get pinged, especially with Wayne Barnes with all that experience. He won't take any nonsense. So discipline for both sides is going to be crucial.
So there we are. It should be a great World Cup final. It'll all play out here in Paris on Saturday night.